Most people who want to get rich are not held back by lack of opportunity. They're held back by behavior. They repeat errors that make wealth accumulation mathematically impossible, then wonder why nothing works. I've watched this for a long time. Intelligent people, hardworking people, people with every advantage you could reasonably ask for. And yet, decade after decade, they stay exactly where they started, not because the world conspired against them, but because they refused to stop doing a small number of destructive things. Wealth is not created by brilliance in short bursts. It's created by avoiding stupidity over long periods of time. That's not a comforting message, but it happens to be true. People like to believe there is some clever trick they're missing, a strategy, a special insight, something that will allow them to outrun their own habits. That belief itself is one of the problems. If you keep doing things that reliably produce bad outcomes, no amount of intelligence will save you. Reality does not care how strong your intentions are. It only responds to what you repeatedly do. I've never been interested in teaching people how to get rich quickly. That usually ends badly. What actually works is much more boring. You identify behaviors that guarantee failure, and you remove them. Then you let time do the rest. The 5 things I'm going to talk about are not subtle. They're obvious once you see them. That's what makes them so dangerous. People defend them, rationalize them, build stories around them. Meanwhile, the math keeps running against them year after year. If you want to accumulate wealth over a lifetime, there are certain behaviors you simply cannot afford. You have to stop them completely. I'm going to walk through those behaviors one at a time, slowly, clearly, without drama. Each one is sufficient on its own to prevent wealth. Together, they explain most financial failure I've seen. You don't need to agree with me. But if you ignore these points, you should not be surprised by the outcome. The first mistake is confusing activity with progress. One of the most reliable ways to fail financially is to stay active without improving your position. People are drawn to activity because it feels responsible. It gives them something to point to. Movement becomes evidence of effort. Unfortunately, effort without judgment is not progress. I've watched this pattern repeat endlessly. People buy and sell constantly. They change strategies. They start new ventures before the old ones have had time to work. They read more, plan more, talk more, and interfere more. When the results disappoint them, they conclude they need even more activity. This is backward. Progress comes from a small number of correct decisions, held long enough for their advantages to compound. Activity interrupts that process. Every unnecessary action introduces friction, cost, and error. Over time, those small penalties accumulate into permanent disadvantage. The urge to stay busy is emotional, not rational. Inactivity creates discomfort. Waiting exposes uncertainty. Doing something, even something foolish, gives the illusion of control. People would rather feel in charge than be right. In investing, this shows up as overtrading. In business, it appears as constant reorganization. In careers, it takes the form of frequent changes without depth. The surface explanation is adaptability. The real cause is impatience combined with insecurity. What actually works is much quieter. You spend a great deal of time deciding what not to do. You avoid situations where frequent decisions are required. You place yourself in positions where time is an ally instead of an enemy. Then you let the arithmetic do its work. This approach looks passive from the outside. It invites criticism. People confuse restraint with laziness. They underestimate how much discipline it takes to refrain from action when everyone else is moving. But wealth is not built by reacting. It's built by positioning. If you make a sound decision and then sabotage it with constant adjustment, you cannot expect a good outcome. The market, the business environment, and life itself reward consistency applied to good judgment. They punish restlessness. I've never seen long-term success come from frantic behavior. The people who do well are not the most active. They are the most selective. They wait for situations where a small number of decisions matter greatly and everything else can be ignored. If you feel the need to be constantly busy to justify your progress, that's a warning sign. Real progress does not need constant reinforcement. It compounds quietly. If you want to accumulate wealth, learn to respect inactivity when it is rational. Learn to sit still. Most people can't. That alone explains a great deal. Next, you must stop ignoring incentives. Ignoring incentives is a huge mistake. People constantly underestimate the power of incentives. Incentives are the hidden drivers behind almost every action you see. They explain why the otherwise rational person does something irrational, why brilliant executives make catastrophic mistakes, and why ordinary people act like fools despite knowing better. If you want to get rich, you must learn to see the world through this lens, because ignoring incentives is a subtle form of self-sabotage. Most mistakes I've observed, and I've seen a lot, are not caused by bad intentions or lack of knowledge. They are caused by the failure to recognize what motivates people, including yourself. Every person responds to the incentives in front of them. If the reward favors short-term thinking, people act short-term. If the reward favors appearances, people sacrifice substance for show. If the reward favors speed, accuracy is abandoned. This is not theory. It is reality, observable in every office, boardroom, and family. The trick is not only recognizing incentives in others, but in yourself. The biggest traps are rarely set by someone else. They are set by your own willingness to pursue rewards without inspecting the full consequences. You chase easy money, status, or praise without understanding the costs hidden in the system. Those costs compound quietly until failure appears inevitable. That is why you must be ruthless in analyzing not just your actions, but the incentives shaping your actions. Incentives can be subtle. They can disguise themselves as convenience, friendship, obligation, or even morality. Many people convince themselves they are acting from principle while unconsciously following rewards that benefit only the short-term ego. The danger is that these hidden incentives often conflict with long-term wealth, freedom, and sanity. Ignoring this is like building a skyscraper on sand. The collapse might take years, but it is certain if the foundation is weak. You can protect yourself by constantly asking, what reward am I chasing? Who benefits most if I act this way? Does this action align with the results I want in 10, 20, 30 years? Answer honestly, or the incentives will answer for you silently with consequences you never predicted. Many people are shocked when life punishes them, yet it is rarely a shock. They just didn't see the forces working under the surface. When you understand incentives, you begin to operate differently. You do not need to be smarter than everyone else. You only need to notice what drives behavior, including your own. Once you see the patterns, you begin avoiding traps almost automatically. You stop wasting time defending the wrong goals, chasing unworthy prizes, or being manipulated by the desires of others. Instead, you focus only on what truly benefits long-term wealth and freedom. This skill is not glamorous, and it requires honesty. It requires humility to admit that your decisions may have been unconsciously biased. It requires patience to wait for incentives to reveal themselves before acting. And it requires courage to act in ways that are uncomfortable in the short term but aligned with long-term reality. Most people avoid this discipline because it is invisible work, no applause, no rush, no immediate gratification. Yet it is the work that separates those who accumulate true wealth from those who squander it. Ignore incentives at your peril. Understand them, and you gain control. Learn to manipulate them responsibly, and you bend systems toward your advantage without ever breaking a rule. Master this, and the path to richness is no longer a matter of luck. It becomes a matter of clear thought, observation, and rational action. Next, avoid overconfidence, the silent killer of wealth. Overconfidence is one of the most dangerous illusions a thinking person can carry. It creeps in quietly, wearing the mask of competence, and before you know it, you are taking risks you cannot afford, trusting judgments that are flawed, and underestimating forces far larger than yourself. I have observed over and over that smart people, brilliant people even, do not fail because they lack knowledge. They fail because they think they know more than they actually do. Confidence is necessary for action, but overconfidence is deadly. The difference is subtle and personal. Confidence is knowing what you do and acting within those bounds. Overconfidence is believing you know more than you do and acting as if consequences do not exist. It inflates risk, clouds judgment, and blinds a person to reality. A man who overestimates his ability walks into traps that are visible to anyone who is honest enough to look. The first step to controlling overconfidence is humility. Humility is not weakness. It is the acknowledgement of your limitations and the relentless testing of your assumptions. If you cannot admit that your mind is prone to error, you are not thinking, you are performing. Thinking is rare, and it requires patience, reflection, and a willingness to change your mind when evidence demands it. I have seen brilliant investors make disastrous moves simply because they assumed they understood markets better than they actually did. The same principle applies in business, personal finance, and even daily life. Overconfidence makes a person commit to decisions too quickly, ignore contrary information, and dismiss warnings from reality. It transforms minor errors into catastrophic failures, often for reasons that are completely preventable. Overconfidence often comes with emotion, pride, desire for recognition, or the urge to outperform others intensifies it. People feel the need to act, to prove themselves, or to maintain the image of competence. But the mind that desires too much respect, too much recognition, becomes blind to the facts right in front of it. Emotional attachment to being right is more dangerous than ignorance. To fight overconfidence, build habits that force reality checks. Write down assumptions. Ask yourself how you could be wrong. Seek out dissenting perspectives. Analyze past failures and the decisions that caused them. Consider the incentives in play, not just your own, but those of the people whose actions affect you. The truth rarely aligns with your ego. It often appears inconvenient, uncomfortable, and demanding. Acknowledge it anyway. I also avoid complexity unless I fully understand it. Complexity is a magnifier of overconfidence because it creates the illusion of sophistication. A complicated plan makes people feel smart, but complexity hides mistakes, obscures accountability, and multiplies risk. Simplicity, combined with rigorous thought, exposes where your understanding is thin. This is why I prefer clear, comprehensible systems. If I cannot explain it in plain terms, I do not trust it. Overconfidence is contagious. Observe social environments carefully. Groupthink, applause, consensus, and admiration all fuel the illusion that you are more capable than you are. Distance yourself from situations that inflate ego without adding substance. Pay attention to the quiet, unflattering signals, hesitation, skepticism, reality. Those are the indicators of truth. The payoff of controlling overconfidence is enormous. When you temper your assumptions with humility, patience, and honesty, you see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. You avoid traps that others cannot perceive. You act decisively when the facts are clear and withdraw when they are not. You save time, energy, and capital. Most importantly, you survive long enough to exploit opportunities that only a patient, rational mind can recognize. Overconfidence is seductive, but discipline is liberating. The temptation to overrate yourself is constant. You must fight it every day. Every decision should pass the test. If I am wrong, what happens? If I am right, is my reward proportional to the risk? Can I afford to be wrong? This practice transforms intelligence into longevity, skill into reliability, and judgment into wealth. Those who master this principle do not brag. They do not feel compelled to prove themselves. They accumulate quietly, steadily, and rationally. Others may boast, gamble, and fail spectacularly. Overconfidence is the silent killer of wealth, but awareness and discipline make it powerless. The mind that respects reality, tests assumptions, and tempers pride is the mind that thrives. Next mistake, and that's the most important for me. It's about social proof and why following the crowd destroys wealth. People often make decisions based on what everyone else is doing. They look to neighbors, colleagues, friends, or the headlines and assume that if others are acting a certain way, it must be correct. This is social proof, and it is one of the most subtle and powerful forces that leads intelligent people to ruin. I see it all the time. Capable, rational minds abandoning their own judgment simply because everyone else is moving in a direction that feels urgent, popular, or accepted. Following the crowd is comfortable. It allows you to avoid conflict, to feel safe, and to claim correctness by association. But the comfort is an illusion. Popularity does not equate to wisdom. History is full of catastrophes caused by crowds, and yet humans consistently fall into the same trap. The market may rise or fall, a fad may surge, and people will buy or sell in unison, believing they are thinking independently. They are not. They are surrendering their rationality to the herd. The danger is amplified because the person following social proof often feels clever. They imagine they are seeing patterns, anticipating trends, or capitalizing on opportunities. In reality, they are reacting to a signal created by collective emotion, greed, fear, envy, all disguised as a rational wave that sweeps the crowd along. When the wave crashes, the individual feels shocked, betrayed, or unlucky, yet the cause is entirely predictable. Human behavior repeats in patterns, and ignoring those patterns is foolish. Understanding social proof requires brutal honesty. You must recognize that you are vulnerable to it, just like everyone else. You are not immune because you are intelligent, educated, or disciplined. Social proof exploits emotional weaknesses, fear of missing out, desire for approval, envy of success, and even laziness. These impulses override reason unless you consciously defend against them. The first defense is awareness. The second is principle. The third is patience. Principle means having clear rules for decision making that are independent of what others do. I ask myself, does this action align with my knowledge, analysis, and long-term objectives, or am I simply mimicking behavior I do not fully understand? If it is the latter, I step back. I observe, I wait, and I avoid acting simply because the majority acts. It is better to miss a moment than to act foolishly and compound errors. Patience is the ability to delay gratification and resist the urgency imposed by the crowd. Markets, trends, and fads are cyclical. They appear pressing, but they are often fleeting and unreliable. Those who master patience, who allow evidence and rationality to guide them, thrive, while others rush headlong into losses. Patience is a skill of the mind, trained through repeated observation of cause and effect. It is reinforced by experience, study, and careful reflection. Social proof can also distort your perception of risk. When everyone else is buying, risk appears minimal. When everyone else is selling, risk appears maximal. But risk does not vanish or intensify because of collective action. Reality is indifferent to perception. Ignoring this fact is a surefire path to loss. Rational assessment of incentives, probabilities, and consequences is the only reliable guide. Emotional mimicry is fatal. I have learned to see patterns of social influence before they dominate my behavior. I watch, I analyze, and I compare incentives. I do not rely on popularity as a measure of correctness. I do not follow trends without understanding their underlying causes. And when I observe irrational waves, I remind myself this is the human condition repeating. It is predictable, observable, and avoidable if I act with clarity and discipline. Social proof is strongest when intelligence is high. A smart person can rationalize almost anything convincingly. If you are capable, you can create intricate explanations for why following the herd is reasonable. This is why intelligence and social proof together are dangerous. They produce the illusion of wisdom while masking poor judgment. The antidote is ruthless self-discipline, constant reality checks, and respect for probabilities. To avoid being trapped by social proof, cultivate a framework for independent judgment. Know what you value, understand your incentives, calculate consequences, and accept the discomfort of standing alone. Most people will not do this because it is uncomfortable. It is safer to conform, to follow, to blend in. But safety is an illusion. Conformity is often the fastest route to mediocrity or disaster. Mastering the influence of social proof is essential for accumulating wealth, protecting capital, and making rational decisions. You do not need to fight the crowd at every moment. You need to observe, understand, and selectively resist. The majority of losses, missed opportunities, and disasters occur because people act without this awareness. Avoiding social proof is not popular or easy, but it is reliable, consistent, and profoundly effective. The mind that resists mimicry, that refuses to surrender to the convenience of collective emotion, is the mind that survives and thrives. Wealth, freedom, and success follow those who think independently, evaluate reality honestly, and act rationally even when everyone else is convinced otherwise. Social proof can destroy ordinary people. It can also sharpen disciplined minds, turning them into observant, calculating, and unshakable operators in a chaotic world. Next, avoid short-term thinking, the slow path to real wealth. People are obsessed with immediate results. They check numbers daily, demand instant feedback, and judge themselves by short-term outcomes. This is a profound error. Wealth, influence, and stability are not created in a day, a week, or even a year. They are the product of consistent, rational action applied over time. The moment you start measuring life in short cycles, you surrender control to luck, emotion, and the whims of others. I have watched brilliant people fail because they wanted results too quickly. They chase immediate returns, sell prematurely, overreact to minor fluctuations, and assume that a lack of instant reward signals failure. They confuse motion with progress, noise with substance. Long-term success requires patience, discipline, and the capacity to ignore the clamor of short-term fluctuations. The key is to define your framework first. What are your principles, goals, and constraints? Once they are clear, the next step is consistent execution. Each decision should be evaluated not only for immediate gain, but for cumulative effect over years or decades. A small, rational choice repeated consistently is more powerful than a grandiose decision made impulsively. Time magnifies the effect of rational behavior, just as it magnifies errors when judgment is flawed. Short-term thinking is often fueled by emotion. Fear of missing out, envy, and impatience distort perception. The stock that went up yesterday appears certain to rise tomorrow. The opportunity ignored by a colleague seems urgent. Social pressure amplifies this effect. People act as if scarcity is real when in fact it is largely manufactured by perception. Acting on these impulses guarantees mistakes. Rational patience protects against this. Avoiding short-term thinking also requires understanding the compounding nature of outcomes. Wealth, knowledge, and influence grow exponentially when decisions are aligned with long-term objectives. One rational, well-timed choice can produce returns that dwarf multiple impulsive moves. Conversely, one impulsive error can undo years of careful effort. Few things are more dangerous than a clever plan executed too quickly without regard for timing or consequences. I also emphasize preparation. When you wait, observe, and learn before acting, you gain clarity that others lack. The impatient are often blind to hidden incentives, risks, and long-term costs. The patient see the patterns, recognize the hazards, and position themselves to take advantage when conditions are favorable. Short-term thinking sacrifices preparation for motion. Long-term thinking rewards preparation with opportunity. Another trap is over-leverage of attention and capital. Impatience encourages constant adjustment, frequent speculation, and the illusion of control. Real wealth grows quietly and steadily. It does not announce itself daily. The stock that appreciates consistently over decades, the business that compounds profit quietly, the skill honed over years, these are all invisible while they grow, but they produce results far beyond any speculative frenzy. The slow path is the sure path. Short-term thinking also misaligns incentives. People act to please others, chase praise, or react to external metrics. These incentives are temporary. They produce action without long-term benefit. When you focus on what matters in the long run, you build immunity to these temporary forces. You act for reality, not applause. You accumulate knowledge, wealth, and reputation in a way that endures. Finally, the discipline to avoid short-term thinking requires a commitment to principles over emotion. Each day presents temptations, the lure of immediate reward, the fear of missing out, the pressure to act. Rejecting these requires clarity of mind and firmness of character. It is not easy. Few succeed. But those who do find that the universe, human behavior, and the compounding power of rational action all bend in their favor over time. Short-term thinking is seductive because it promises excitement and motion. Long-term thinking is less glamorous but far more effective. Wealth, stability, and control belong to those who resist the crowd, who delay gratification, and who let time multiply the power of disciplined decisions. The slow path is not slow by accident. It is slow because it is deliberate, rational, and aligned with reality. Follow it consistently, and you bypass the traps that destroy the impatient, the impulsive, and the overconfident.